Meeting is live.
Well, good afternoon. I would like to call our meeting to order. Welcome to everyone and to our guests today. I'll call the meeting to order with the words of our opening, which we use for each meeting. We would like to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We recognize the peace and friendship treaties signed between the British Crown and the Mi'kmaq. We are all treaty people and we have rights and responsibilities as Mi'kmaq and settlers alike. Having done that, I would now like to call for a motion to approve the minutes. They were circulated. Is someone prepared to move that we accept these minutes as circulated?
I so move. Councillor Blackburn.
I second that.
Moved by Councillor Blackburn and seconded by Christine. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. There being no opposition, I would declare that the motion is carried. The next item of business is the order of business and approval of additions or deletions. I'm not aware of any additions or deletions at this time. Does anyone have anything they would like to add at this point? No, so then I would call for a motion to approve the order of business as circulated.
I'll make that motion to approve the order of business.
Holly's made the motion. Could I have a seconder?
I can second. It's Lily.
Thank you, Lily Barraclough. So moved by Holly and seconded by Lily that the order of business be approved as circulated. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Next item is business arising from the minutes, and I just want to let you know that at the last meeting, you'll recall that the following motion was moved, seconded, and passed. And that motion is this. I'm going to read it to you. That the Women's Advisory Committee recommend that the Executive Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional and Council invite Home for Good project members to present the findings of their housing research project in order to provide an understanding of gendered housing issues specific to the HRM. Following the meeting, I then learned that this motion, as it's stated, is out of order. And so therefore we cannot take any further action on this particular motion. However, I'm delighted that Holly and Haneen are both looking into other ways to address this issue. And we will hear more from them at the June meeting. So that's the only item arising from the minutes. And now I will call for any declaration of any conflicts of interest. You've seen the agenda, you know what we're going to discuss. Are there any conflicts of interest that anyone needs to declare? Hearing none, we will proceed. There's no deferred business and no correspondence, petitions, or delegations. And so therefore we're ready to move right on to reports from our staff. And we're looking forward to hearing first from Roberto Montiel. Have I pronounced your name correctly, Roberto? Who is with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Roberto, our plan is to allow you up to 15 minutes to make a presentation. And then we'll have about another 15 minutes for questions. And what we do with regard to those questions is we kind of have a round table where I'll go around alphabetically and everybody will have an opportunity to either make a comment or ask a question, and so that each person gets a chance to speak to whatever it is that you've presented. So I'll turn the floor over to you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jane. Good afternoon, everybody. I really would like to, I would prefer to allow more time for questions and to have more of a chat with you. So I was trying to decide what kind of pitch of the many pitches that I have I should use. If it's the elevator, the hallway, the launch pitch. So I will, and because I'm a Mexican, we are not known for conciseness. So I'll try to keep it on the hallway pitch, and then we can expand a little bit as we chat. So I am going to assume that you don't know much about this fantastic project that I lead called the Local Immigration Partnership. So I'm just going to give a little context about that, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about uh, this this specific project here in Halifax. So um, the Local Immigration Partnership is a federal initiative. It is funded by Immigration, Refugees, Citizenship Canada. It started in 2009, and the whole rationale, which is really what is still the most interesting and fascinating feature of this project, is that the rationale behind it was that even though immigration is federally uh, regulated and federally funded, um, immigrants really settle in towns or in cities or in specific regions, and the in their immigration largely depend on how ready they are to allow immigrants to integrate with the what they bring, with all the strengths that they bring, the experience that they bring, and at the same time addressing timely which are their needs. So one of the things that this project recognized was that also Canada is very, very interesting in terms of immigration. And I'm talking here in terms of distribution of immigrants. As you probably know, there's like 3 cities that take most of immigrants, have taken most of immigrants for a very long time. So you have Toronto, you have Montreal, you have Vancouver, you have larger urban areas that are more used to receiving immigrants. But suddenly, immigration became really, really important, not only for population growth, but also for economic growth. And then the pretty much every single region was interested in having more immigrants in their towns or in their cities, and they were seeing that retention was really, really difficult. And one of the things that the folks who were putting together this pilot at the beginning in 2009, one of the things that they were looking at was how is it that we can have that it doesn't really matter how big or how small your immigration sector is. What is really important is how connected they are and how connected they are to community. So that's really what still to this day is behind our mandate. There are about 80 something, I would say 80, I want to say 81 local immigration partnerships across Canada, and we all share the same mandate. And kind of the vision mission kind of keeps changing. It is adjusted every time that we have a call for proposals, but that underlying feature that I was talking about, that really hasn't changed at all. And so now this specific local immigration partnership. Couple of trivia facts in case you ever go to a live trivia. They're super fun. A couple of trivia facts is this one was the first local immigration partnership in Atlantic Canada. We started in 2013. And at this point in time, there are 10 LIPs in Atlantic Canada. And I'm happy to say there are 4 in Nova Scotia after this one. This was for a long time the only local immigration partnership. Then New Brunswick, like out of the blue, got 3. And then, of course, Nova Scotia got jealous and we were able to get 2. And a little bit after that, we got into 4. So right now, there are 4 local immigration partnerships. Here, there are 4. Actually, it was saying 10. No, it's 12. There are 4 in New Brunswick. Then there is 1 local immigration. You see, a very important thing about this is math is not very important. It's actually 10. No, St. John's in Newfoundland, they have one, and then there's a provincial immigration partnership with Prince Edward Island. And specifically for this region, what this project was in 2013 and what this project is now is very, very different. This project looks really different. Unfortunately, and this is a spoiler alert, and we still we're going to revamp our partnership, and we're going to start new tables, new working groups, a different action plan, and that was going to start in 2020. Of course, all of our plans were derailed. So I can tell you a little bit of what it used to be. Oh, sorry, is the sound? Is there some problem? I know that my internet connection is not incredible. So let me see if I turn out the video. You don't really need to see me. It's really not that important. So let's just have the voice here. This disembodied voice. Hopefully the sound is going to keep stable. So at the beginning of the partnership, there were many people involved in the settlement sector deciding whether it was a good thing or bad thing to bring about a leap here, whether it was necessary, not a bad thing, but whether it was necessary to have a leap here. And there was a big consensus about having a leap here. Most of our main partners who are in our advisory committee are pretty much the same partners that originated this idea at the beginning. So we had at that time, of course, the municipal government. We had the Nova Scotia Office of Immigration. We had ISANS, the YMCA, the Halifax Partnership, the Nova Scotia Health Authority, and the school board talking to each other about this idea. And once they put that idea forward for the municipality took it. Very important. There are two kinds of LIPs. One kind of LIP is housed by a non-for-profit, kind of an ISANS here. The other kind of LIP is housed by municipal governments. So we are in that latter category. And the municipality took the decision to house a LIP. And at the beginning, pretty much it was all around the networks, all around building a strong network of service providers. Then it was ensuring that they talk to each other, that there were mechanisms in place for them to know what each other was doing, finding opportunities for collaboration, identifying any possible weaknesses or gaps or missing links. So all those things happened during the first 3 years of the partnership. And then we moved into what, if you can remember, 2016 was very, very interesting year for immigration, 2015 and 2016, for refugees specifically. So during that year, the partnership really focused on refugees and focused on bringing better services to refugees. And then we moved from that to more project-oriented LIP. And that project-oriented LIP came a little bit at a crossroads, because we were at some point thinking whether it was whether the LIP was supposed to do stuff. Because when we sign our contract with IRCC, that contract says that we do not provide services. And then there's a lot of slippery slopes there as to what is considered a service and what is considered an initiative, a project, et cetera, et cetera. So most of our partners said that they wanted a LIP that was action-oriented, that did stuff. So even though we were not meant to, and we are not meant to provide services, we have been kind of, and we were for a couple of years, a little bit of a sandbox for the immigration sector. We were testing ideas, we piloted stuff with them, and then some of these ideas would really resonate with them, and then they would take them to the organization, so they would continue collaborations on their own. And so in a way, we became a little bit of initiators and a place to test new ideas. And I'm just going to say this about what the LEAP is supposed, or the HIP, because we actually also rebranded and we found this super clever acronym for the Halifax Immigration Partnership, and the HIP was born. And what the HIP looks like now, well, actually, no, now it is in limbo, but what the HIP should look like once we're able to complete those tables is we're going to have 5 working groups that will be looking at strategic priorities and moving those strategic priorities forward. Those priorities were identified by our main partners, by that advisory committee I was speaking about. And then we have these 5 tables that hopefully will start operating this year. One is about having an immigrant lens to municipal services and policies. We have another group that will be looking at intercultural connections. We'll have another group looking at multilingualism and multiliteracies. A 4th group looking at the diversification of the workforce, and then a 5th group looking at family reunification. Another important thing that's probably our biggest win for, if it can be called a win for 2020. I don't think that there's lots of wins in 2020, but if we can call that, is we are also in the process of creating a web platform for immigrants in Halifax, and we're hoping to launch that by the end of June. And what that platform is meant to be, the first thing is it will centralize information that is relevant for new immigrants, so that folks don't have to be going to all this plethora of information that's around, and they have one specific place that will connect them to what is around and available for them. The other is to be a point of connection for service providers. And then the third one is to have a hub for immigrant stories. And here, when I say immigrant stories, I'm not only talking about success stories, I'm talking about all kinds of stories, all kinds of narratives that are coming from immigrants. So yeah, I think that with that, I kind of covered a little bit what we do. And I am hoping that I also lose track of time very easily. So I'm hoping that, I don't know if I took the 15 minutes or 10 or how long, because it's always a pleasure, but yeah.
Thank you, Roberto. You're good on time. So we'll go around the table now, and if people have questions or comments for you, we'll kind of take turns doing that. Lily, can I ask you to lead off? Lily's used to leading off, so I think she'll be good.
Great presentation. Thank you so much. It's not something I know much about, but I learned a lot, and I don't have any questions at this time, but I look forward to other people's questions.
Haneen, I'm sorry, I'm going to step back to you. Haneen, could you help us out here?
Sure. I do have a question. You discussed working with schools. Could you talk about some issues that students, for instance, face and how those are being addressed fully?
Sure. Here, is it international students or students like?
So, for instance, with high schools and such, like
Okay.
refugee students, I do know that they do really have a hard time adjusting. So I'm just wondering what things are instituted to sort of address that.
That's a fantastic question. So as far as I know, we haven't really worked that much on the integration of students in the school system here. There are, and the main reason is there are already mechanisms in place that seem to be working. We support them. So we do support the YMCA that is largely leading these efforts. And we have connected in when there had been specific issues. For instance, there was an issue in not so long ago in Fairview, and we brought a whole very large group of stakeholders together to talk and address that. So we also brought the police, and we talked about which would be the best strategies to address some of the issues that were uh, kind of escalating between immigrant youth, specifically refugee youth, and some of the Canadian-born students. So we, in that way, we're more ad hoc. Now, the part where we were a little bit more of a leading force, and we are hoping to continue to be a leading force, is around language. So at the beginning, the school board uh, was with iSense, the main EAL provider in Halifax. At this point, I think iSense has now about 95% of the students, but at that time, the school board was a very large and very important stakeholder with EAL. And what was really interesting in that journey was to see how EAL became less and less relevant, and heritage languages and the preservation of heritage languages started to become increasingly important. So this group, for instance, started a couple of, I want to say 2018, yeah, 2018, they hosted the first multilingual fair in Halifax. Like that hadn't happened before. And then we did the same in 2019, and of course we had to cancel 2020. But that is, for instance, one of those initiatives that we are hoping that we will continue, and that hopefully our plan was that 2020 was the last one that the LEAP was going to leave, and that now there is a community group that is kind of taking charge of that, and the LEAP was going to kind of step back and just support. So that was the idea for 2020. I don't know. Again, we'll have to see how things are for 2021. But yeah, the idea was that we were going to be able to step back and allow these folks from community to take that on.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Councillor Blackburn, we'll move on to you. Any comments or questions?
Thank you very much. No, great presentation. I'd heard sort of little snippets about this project, but this is sort of the first time I've had a comprehensive, look at what's going on, and this is fantastic. And you know what? Just to follow up on your last comment, I think that is the best case scenario when you launch a project and it becomes successful and the community embraces it and then wants to take it over. That's just sort of the best feeling. You've just sort of deliver the baby and you give it to the community. And so I really appreciate that work, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. I love the analogy. Thanks a lot for that analogy.
Tanya, how about you? Any questions or comments?
Yeah, a quick question. So you had mentioned about decentralized information, and we've heard from other organizations that that's exactly what they want, is more easily accessible information. So how will you work together with the local organizations, or how can they work with you in order to make that a reality?
Yes, that's exactly where we are at now. Thanks a lot for that. So at this point, what we agreed on was that we had enough data. I forgot to mention, but one of the things that we did with the city was the newcomers guide, and that stayed in the Halifax.ca website for a long time. That is a very significant chunk of data that we have around what exists around the city right now for immigrants. Now, our gamble, or our bet here is we open the shop, and once we open the shop with the data that we have, folks are going to come to the shop and are going to tell us, oh yeah, you need to mention our program here, and you need to mention our program, and the community, we're hoping, the community and the service providers are going to feed us with that information, and we will be able to keep that information up to date, so that it is not only an accessible resource, but it is also a resource that is reliable, that can be kept up to date. One of the biggest problems with the, well, problems and also quirks of the integration sector is that there is a lot of their programs, and the eligibility for their programs tends to vary a lot, even through the year. So sometimes information that it may be relevant in, let's say, fiscal year, early fiscal year, relevant in the summer, may not be that relevant in the fall because there was a change in eligibility eligibility or numbers, or there was a change in the program. So several things that sometimes we may have up may not be accurate information. So our hope, because that task is like to keep that up to date, if we had someone full-time just looking at that, would not be able to do really the work that is needed. Our hope is that the community will be coming and feed us with the information that we need to reflect reliable and accessible information.
Thanks. Mallory, we'll move on to you.
Questions, but thank you for sharing. What you're doing is wonderful. So I can't wait to see what happens next.
Okay. Holly, how about you? Would you like to make any comments or questions?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. First, thank you for the presentation. I had heard a little, but didn't know a lot about it. So I learned a lot from your kind of short presentation. My question is about the working groups, and maybe I had missed this because of the sound, but I was just wondering who is going to be a part of those working groups, and how are you, I guess, recruiting folks for those working groups?
Yeah, so our recruitment strategy had to change dramatically, and we had to postpone indefinitely the outreach. We're hoping to resume it by this quarter. And the way we're approaching this now, thanks a lot for the question, because the approach that we used to have for working groups was like an open tent. So pretty much anybody who had anything to do with creating a welcoming community was welcomed in the working groups. So that means almost anybody. So we had sometimes very large working groups, and we learned that it was not the best environment for action-oriented groups. So what we will be doing now is our advisory committee gave us nominated folks for these working groups. We will keep these working groups relatively small, between 5 and 6 people, and we know that the people who are joining have their own networks. So every time that we are moving something, those networks can be activated, but we don't need to have all those folks at every meeting, or asking them to come to every meeting as it was done in the past. We found that that was not the most effective way to work, if what we wanted, because at that point it worked very well, because at the beginning it was more about sharing information. At this point, if we really want to do stuff, we need to change a little bit the nature, so it will be kind of smaller. And yeah, and the recruitment pretty much is coming from our advisory committee. Those partners I was saying, they have been feeding us the names.
Okay, thank you for that. And Councillor Stoddard, do you have any comments or questions?
Hi, Roberto. Thank you for your presentation. Don't have a question, but I do have some comments. I like the fact that you're creating a platform to centralize information, because a lot of the times you have these really good groups but they're here, there, and everywhere. And then sometimes they repeat information. Sometimes nobody gets the right information out. So it's really nice that they'll have one point of contact. The other thing I really like is talking about sharing stories. Stories, for me, they bring out the essence of the group. Like it's you might hear things in a story that, you know, just resonate with yourself, or something that you've never heard about, or something that you could repeat to someone else, and then you get the passion of the storyteller. Like you get all of that out of stories, and sometimes they're lost. And I think they're very important, very important. I mean, I look at the Indigenous people, I look at the people of color, you know, their stories are rich and they have a lot of history. And I think those are the two. And I also like the fact that you're talking about municipal services, because that again is something you could connect to when you're talking about communication. You could have it out there. But other than that, everything, I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
And Christine, any comments or questions?
Thank you, Roberto, for your presentation. It's great. Actually, Councillor just mentioned exactly what I think about earlier, especially about the story part. I think it's just so important to tell not only the success story, also talk about the struggle, the challenge. And I'm curious, what would be the platform for your group to share the story? Will it through the HRM social media, or will it be a separate channel?
Yeah, I think that at the beginning it won't be only on the website, and then we'll see how how those stories can be further disseminated. We are looking to, we will be starting really small, just like kind of asking folks to tell us about different things. So it is about municipal services, maybe telling us about that, and then trying to curate some of these stories. And then hopefully one of our hopes when we put the proposal for IRCC for these 5 years is that intercultural connections working group, that they will be using that as a platform. So part of what that group will be doing is facilitating connections between immigrants and other underrepresented or underserved groups. So it's creating connections with Indigenous folks, it's creating connections with African Nova Scotians. And so one of those points of connection is stories. We want to host as much as we can storytelling with between these groups. And then we are hoping that this web platform will be used as one of those places where these stories can live and then be disseminated. And then when they go to social media, I think that I will be calling you, Christine, because I know you're fantastic. You know very much about that, and I don't. So, so then I will be calling folks who know very well how to disseminate information in social media.
I'm happy to help them out. Thank you.
Thanks. We have a little bit of time, so I think perhaps I'll ask a question. I too really enjoyed your presentation, and I learned a lot. There's a couple of things I just maybe need to hear more about, and that is, you mentioned your advisory group, but I didn't quite get who is on the advisory group. That's one thing. And then the other thing is that, of course, we're the women's advisory group. And so we look at everything through a gender lens. And if you'd maybe like to talk a little bit about immigrant issues and women, and any organizations or any initiatives that you've seen, or anything that particularly relates to women, that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things, because I'm seeing that Tracy has her hand up, so I want to say one of the things is we are in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, expertly led by Tracy Jones-Grant, and we have a very lovely team there. And I'm saying this because it is one of the strengths, nationally, it is one of the strengths for this lift, is that we sit where we're sitting at. That helps to look at immigration always from a point of intersectionality. So having all these, like having now, I don't have them at the office, but well, my colleagues are right there and they are looking at all these different issues. And then we're constantly talking about how these issues connect. And so that's one of those things. Talking about the advisory committee. Um, so we, it has changed a little bit, but not very dramatically. Um, the advisory committee is chaired by the municipality. So Tracy sits at that advisory committee as the municipal representative. We have a representative from the Nova Scotia Office of Immigration, and now there's a mouthful there, population growth, etc. We have a representative from them, a representative from ISENS, one from the YMCA. We have one representative from United Way. We used to have a representative from the Nova Scotia Health Authority. The person who's representing that area is still, their area of expertise is still health. And we have a representative from what used to be the school board and now is the regional center, and one representative from the Halifax partnership. Now, as you mentioned, gender, and gender has been really being more and more of a granular and an issue that has been more of a focus now than it used to be when I started this job. I think that probably the two biggest resources here for the work that is being done, I know that with India, doing incredible and
Cutting out
the
here.
work that is doing on the, it's cutting. Okay, let me take myself out here. Yeah, we I would say the wider YMCA on uh, gender plus uh, gender plus lens to immigration. Specific things, I think that I would have to follow up depending on what you're looking at. Specific challenges, there are so many, and I just heard at the beginning that you were looking at issues related to housing. That's one of the biggest issues right now. And with the pandemic, we don't even know the numbers, but we know that probably one of the most affected groups is refugee women. And the thing is, we don't really know much at this point, neither the impact nor really the numbers. So two key sources would be the folks from the YMCA, folks from the mobile crisis from the YMCA may have a little bit more of an idea in terms of numbers, and the YW. Definitely people from the YWCA, they are dealing with this, but right now what they can give is more of anecdotal data or information based on the clients and the people they are serving. We don't really have like good data on this. We don't know much. We just know that they are probably one of the most affected groups by this pandemic and by the lockdown.
Thanks. Tracy, I'm going to turn it over to you. You wanted to make a comment here.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to one of the very first questions about LIP. So I think for this committee, it's to understand that LIP is a coordinating body. So LIP doesn't necessarily program, but the expertise of LIP is an issue comes up and Roberto knows who to pull all those people to the table and work with those people to address an issue and to bring that municipal lens to that conversation. So when he was talking about concerns in Fairview, we had the same issue, for example, in Uniacke Square. We knew who to bring to the table. We knew how to facilitate that, how to bring the municipal lens on that. So that's one of the main focuses of LIP is to bring those resources to the table. But what I really appreciate about LIP is it also allows the community to generate their own responses and solutions, as opposed to government swooping in and saying, here's, I think this is best for you. So it's that facilitation role. So if you're looking for somebody and, you know, there's a concern related to immigrant and specifically immigrant women, Roberto is the person who can bring those right voices to the table. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is there was an ask about the platform. So we are developing a website. Right now, things sit on halifax.ca. It's a bit clunky. It's not really, you know, all that great. So we are developing, through Roberto's leadership, of course, our own separate website that will link to Halifax. So that allows for more of that freedom of the stories, and it's not owned by HRM. It's not sort of bound by the communication protocols of HRM. This is totally owned by LIP, which is really exciting. And one thing Roberto didn't mention that I really wanted to mention when he was talking about intersectionality, there was one thing that LIP did that I think really was quite amazing in recognizing the disconnect between immigrants and our First Peoples, and understanding that people were coming to this province that was already settled. Roberto worked with ISANS and others, and Roberto, I apologize for not being able to name the groups, and we all went out to a Mawiomi. We got on a bus and got in cars and took families and new immigrants to a Mawiomi in Millbrook. And we also had the opportunity for our immigrant guests to come in the parade of the Mawiomi. It was just really creating that connection to understand that we are all visitors in this land, but to bring our new immigrants to a Mawiomi, and for many, it was the very first time. It was phenomenal, and probably one of the most exciting initiatives that I got to participate in, other than some of the other things. But that's really what LIP is about. It's creating that connection to people who are coming into HRM with how municipal resources, and then Roberto takes it even further to all of those resources that are community-based. I just wanted to kind of, so you guys kind of knew LIP's coordinating role.
Thanks, Tracy, for clarifying that. Caroline, you wanted to ask, and this will be the last comment because our time for this agenda item has run out. Thanks, Caroline.
Thanks, Jane, for allowing me to ask a question. Roberto, I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how the local immigration partnership sort of interacts or provides, you know, coordination around, you know, conversations that have to do with migrant women. So I'm thinking about women who are temporary foreign workers, live-in caregivers, women who we know have been really impacted by COVID restrictions because they have temporary status, right? So I'm talking, you know, specifically about people who are not permanent residents and not eligible for settlement services or supports. Could you speak to that?
Sure, it will be very fast. A very quick answer. We haven't. And the one, there are two reasons. One main reason is we are funded by IRCC, which has as their main mandate permanent residents. Now, that doesn't mean that that is fantastic. And we part of what the whole national league has been doing is to ask for more room for us to advocate for other folks like migrants, migrant women. So unfortunately, none of the folks who are working with migrant women here are very, and they're not like for happens with asylum seekers and the work. We have been a little bit more work on that. The Halifax Refugee Clinic is really the only place here, and it's very so it's very similar to, yeah. My sound is still poor. I'm
Yeah,
very sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that unfortunately we're not getting the benefit of your answer. So
And it was so passionate. I'm so sorry. There's so much passion in my, probably that's what happened.
Yeah. Roberto, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We enjoyed it. And as you can see, there were lots of questions and comments. Are you going to continue, stay with us through the duration of our meeting?
Sure. Yeah.
Because I know that
if my sound allows, I will probably take my video off so that I can stay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I know that there was another question, and I'm just thinking there may be time for it at the end of our meeting. If we have time, we'll come back to it because I know Haneen had another question.
Totally happy to do that.
So thank you. We'll move on then. Knowing that everybody's had a chance at least to get their comments and questions in once, to the next item on the agenda, and that's an update on GBA Plus from the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And Caroline, you're going to give us a quick update on that, please.
Sure. Yep, I can keep it quick and brief. So good evening, everyone. I hope that you're well, given the rising cases with COVID, and that you're safe and well. We continue, the Office of Diversity Inclusion and ANSIO continues to work on the creation of a GBA Plus toolkit for HRM employees. And at the same time as we're working on that toolkit development, we're also identifying internal champions and people who can help us, make sure that the tool will be successful within the organization. And last but not least, we're providing one-on-one support to some staff members from different departments like HR who are already interested or ready to start using GBA Plus in their work. So that's what we've accomplished and we're working on in the last month.
Thanks. Sounds like lots on your plate. And now Tracy is going to give us an update on the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. When we talked at our last agenda planning meeting, we kind of realized that maybe we don't have a grasp of the full scope of the activity of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And so, Tracy, I'll turn the floor over to you for the next few minutes.
So what I wanted to do for this committee was bring forward to your attention activities that our office is engaged in that I think your committee might want more information on, or might want to put the gendered lens on, because I think that that's why I would come to this committee for advice. So I'm going to start with, since we were just talking about the local immigration project, we have each business unit has certain outcomes that it has to have or has to do. So one of the outcomes for the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, African Nova Scotian Affairs, is to create an immigration strategy for the municipality. So some time ago, we had an immigration strategy that talked about what actions the municipality would take to support immigration, retention, in the municipality. That strategy is, we should have had a new one last year. We didn't because of COVID. So we are in the process of writing a new one. This is just a heads up to say that I would like to, at some point, come back, or actually probably maybe Roberto and I, come back to consult with this committee to get your input in what this would look like from the lens of how we are supporting immigrant women in the municipality. So we will be doing consultations with community. We will be doing consultations with business units. We'd also like the opportunity to consult with this committee before we even get into writing this plan. So that's one piece that I wanted to bring to your attention. The second one is the province has mandated that each municipality must have an accessibility strategy and action plan. So for the past 2 years, we've been working on this. We've done quite a bit of consultation with community. We've done quite a bit of consultation internally. And of course, all of this was done before this committee existed. And so, apologies up front that your lens was not on this. But this strategy is intended to go to council on May the 11th, I believe, or it might be the 18th. But when that goes to council and it then becomes a public document, again, I'd like to bring that back to this committee for some conversation, because the actions there we can look at through a gendered lens. So this is another piece of work, because what we are learning in our work, and Caroline can vouch for this, is we often talk about accessibility, but we don't often talk about the impact of accessibility on persons with disabilities, on women with disabilities. And it could look different if I am a woman with a disability. And so we need to ensure that that voice is part of how we move this whole action plan forward. The last big piece of work that we're working on that, again, I would like to have the opportunity to bring back to this committee is we've been tasked, our office, with developing an anti-Black racism strategy and a framework and an action plan. This is huge. We will be going to council again this month, bringing forward our proposed plan to develop the action plan and strategy. So I'm ahead of the game. We would like to again come to this committee to have that conversation, because we won't have written it yet. So we will be consulting with community, and we'll be consulting with all different community groups, different interest groups. But again, it's your opportunity to provide that gendered lens when we look at anti-Black racism. The one thing that I want to say that's very important, talking about anti-Black racism does not require Black voices. It requires our allies. It requires people who are committed to making corporate change. So this is a real exciting opportunity for this group, especially to talk about it from the lens of women, is going to be huge. So those are 3 pieces that, as we move along, I'm going to put in a request to be able to speak and present those to you to get your feedback. Finally, I just wanted to bring to your attention some upcoming dates, just so that you're aware of it. So May 17th, I hope I have this correct. Roberto, correct me if I'm wrong, is International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. So again, I just want the committee to be aware of that. We are in the process of looking at our work around Access Awareness Week. June is Indigenous Peoples Month. June 21st is Indigenous Persons Day. So these are things that we are working on in our office. And I just wanted to put those on your radar so that you're watching for what's happening in the community. Finally, yesterday was a day to acknowledge and remember our missing and murdered Indigenous women. Most of us may have, or, we might have thought about it. Some of us may have worn red, but this is really important. So again, there is the opportunity for this group to have a conversation about Indigenous women in HRM. We know that we have had missing and murdered women in our municipality, and we know that there are issues facing Indigenous women. So, maybe sometime on the agenda, we could invite someone to come and speak about the needs of Indigenous women in the municipality. And that's my update. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Tracy, that's very exciting and challenging for our committee. We have a minute or two. If anybody wants to make a comment or ask a question, just raise your hand at this point. I'll just recognize you. All right, we're all good. I'll move on. So since we got a little bit of, we got like 3 or 4 minutes, Haneen, and Roberto's still here. Haneen, if that question for Roberto is still in your mind, please, well, it's kind of out of order, but we'll let you ask that question now.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Tracy, for that presentation and for clarifying the project's scope. I think that really helped me form this question a bit better. So in terms of the fostering programs, especially with immigrant children, it's often quite difficult. And I do know that quite a few community centers have worked to help link up foster children in terms of allowing them to continue to be in their community. But I was wondering if that's within the scope of the program and project?
It hasn't been so far. Thank you so much for that, because it is a great thing to put into our stuff. I don't know if it's going to if it's going to fly, but definitely something that I would love to bring back to our advisory committee. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on then to the next item on the agenda. And this is just for us to kind of comment and ask questions or raise, not really ask questions because we don't have our presenters here to ask them of, but just for us to comment and think about the issues that were raised by our speakers from our last meeting, from the iSense group and from IMWA. We heard 2 very interesting presentations, but did not really have a lot of time to respond to it. So Haneen, I'm going to come back to you and ask, is there anything that you would like to comment on or regarding those 2 presentations?
I'm just pulling up my notes from last time, so if you could just come back to me at the end, if that's possible.
I'll come back to you, sure. Lily, how about you?
I don't have anything to bring up at this time.
Okay, all right. Councillor Blackburn, we're moving on quickly here. Is there anything that you would like to comment on?
Just sort of thinking back, I think the only thing that I comment that I wanted to make the iSands presentation, and to me, one of the things that really stood out was the slide that women have taken in the workforce as a result of COVID, and I think that's something that we as a group should probably keep an eye on in the coming months as COVID recovery continues. That making sure that the lens is firmly on bringing back as many women as possible to the workforce post-pandemic. I thought that to be most interesting in the presentation, but that was it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Tanya, any comments from you?
I do. It was a question, but I'll just.
But I think if it's a question, that's fair enough too. We can maybe get these answered at another time, so feel free.
Okay. Perfect. So my question was for iSense about what they considered to be the largest concern for their clients regarding housing. So is it about housing that's big enough, or housing that's affordable enough, or a neighborhood? Like, what is, from an immigrant perspective, what are they most concerned about?
Okay, thank you, Tanya. We'll figure out a way to communicate that question to them, see if we can get an answer to that. And Mallory, how about you?
No additional questions. My memory's not the best, so none that I can think of off the top of my head.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. And Holly.
Yeah, I just had, I guess, a comment, and it's exactly what Councillor Blackburn said. I think what stood out to me the most was the iSands presentation, particularly around the impact of COVID on women and immigrant women. And I agree, I think anything that we can do as a committee that ensures that at a municipal level, we're looking at a feminist recovery for COVID is important. And as well, how our municipal programs and policies can support immigrant women kind of post-COVID. And I think we're seeing, especially from I don't know so much here in Nova Scotia, we don't have that data, but certainly in Ontario, we're seeing that multi-generational families are really being impacted. A lot of that due to housing and large families living in tight corners. So I think, yeah, if we are privy to that information here in HRM, I think it's something that we should just keep it on our radar and figure out how as a committee we might be able to address or at least keep a pulse on what's going on.
Okay, thanks. And Councillor Stoddard.
Hi. Just picking up on what Councillor Blackburn talked about, COVID and its effect on women in the workplace. That kind of relates to housing as well, because I get a lot of calls from women, single women with children that are affected by, say, the landlord selling the house because the market is so good, or moving away, or something along that lines, and the women are stuck, literally stuck, and they don't have anywhere to go with their children. So, and COVID doesn't help. It kind of exacerbates the situation a little bit, because not only can't they find housing, but the housing that's there may not be suitable. So yeah, another thing we should keep our eye on is, the housing effect on COVID and women with children. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Christine.
I have a couple of takeaway from that presentation. Jennifer mentioned that there's a lack of data on the employment about like a race, different race. So like what organization or what who is responsible for this kind of data. And I will mention about similar issue on data later on my anti-Asian residents topic. Another one is she mentioned about for HRM, the city, that's meaning like a public space and the recreation program. When we design this program, how can we put on a gender-based lens? I think that's something for us to think about as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, and just if I may just follow up to what you're saying, Christine, the ISAN's presentation, she talked about the focus on, immigrant women. And I noticed that, the common ground between them and us as the Women's Advisory Group was certainly a focus on diverse leadership. That's one of our concerns, that the leadership in our community becomes more diverse. Affordable housing, exactly one of our concerns. And public spaces, another one of our concerns. So it just identified for me that we have common ground with another organization, and they're probably a resource to us, and we may be a resource to them as we try to focus on these issues. Similarly with IMWA, at one of their slides, I don't have the slide in front of me, but she raised several points that are of concern to them from a needs assessment study. And again, many of the issues that they raised are issues that are of concern to us. So again, just the fact that we have common ground and that we can be a resource to them, they a resource to us perhaps as we move ahead. Tracy and Caroline, either of you want to make any comments with regard to what you heard or read from ISANS or IMWA?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Me neither.
Okay, we're good then. Next item on the agenda. If I get my agenda in front of me, I just moved it out of my way. Oh, son of a gun, what did I do with my agenda?
Madam Chair, could I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Just in terms of the for ISANS, I just I was able to find my question.
Okay.
So I had noted in their presentation that they mentioned the equalizing of credentials, and echoing what Councillors Blackburn, Stoddard, and Hollyall mentioned, we are aiming for a feminist recovery. So I wanted to ask about the process that if iSense is really venturing into equalizing of credentials, especially with immigrant women, because they often have one opportunity to get education, and then when they come to Canada, it's not recognized. So I would have liked to know if that's something that we could address or discuss, or if there's anything that we could work on that front for.
Okay, yeah, I remember that that comment as well, and very important. So we'll follow up with them on that as well. Thank you for that. All right, Christine, it's your turn. Over to you. We're going to hear Christine talk a little bit more about the anti-Asian racism presentation that she made last time, and let's maybe pursue a conversation about further steps on that.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. So thank you everyone for this opportunity. Let me to talk about the presentation I in the first meeting, and we will I will turn the floor after to everyone and then hear your input. Firstly, you may see my background, and I want to acknowledge that May is Asian Heritage Month, and oh, thank you, Amika. And May is Asian Heritage Month, and this year the theme of Asian Heritage Month, which is resilience, resolve, and recognition. And here in the chat, I post an event that actually is organized by HIM. Is on the Asian Heritage Month, and I think they do a fantastic job. If you have time, please check out this wonderful event. So now I would like to talk about my presentation on the anti-Asian racism. So three key issue I would say is firstly, like let's according to 2020's data, there's 60% of anti-Asian racism incident happened to women. And also many of these incidents happen in public space. And also there's a lack of data about this anti-Asian racism. And so at the last page of my slide, I have some 4 suggestions. And it's a little bit wordy, so I will try to describe in a way easier for you to understand. The first one, I would like to recommend that the HIM to like establish a dialogue with a local Asian community and immigrant group to understand what's the real issue happening on the anti-Asian racism, to have this kind of roundtable conversation. And second one, originally my thought is, as a watch, can we issue a statement to condemn anti-Asian racism and misogyny incident happened. Unfortunately, what I learned is out of our mandate, but it was my original thought. And the third and the fourth will be my priority. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a lack of data on anti-Asian racism. And also as we talk about anti-Asian racism, most of time, sometimes it happens to women. And also it's like, as we talk about, is the intersectionality, like these two issues combined together, it become a bigger issue. So I would recommend, if watch committee, we can make a motion that the executive standing committee can recommend the HIM, the related organization, to fill the gap in this anti-Asian racism data, including gender-specific data. And the last one, but no less, I think is very important. I mentioned, many this kind of incident happening in a public space. So sometimes we imagine immigrant women with children in a public space face this kind of issue, and then maybe these women do not speak very fluent English. And when I do a little bit of research in New York City, they have what they have done is they have poster in 21 different language, so people can report racism incident. And I think that's something HIM can do as well. So I recommend we make a motion so HIM will be able to provide this kind of information in a place like a public library or by a bus transit. That's my idea, and I look forward to hear your input, and maybe some of you may want to work together with me, and then we can come up with some motions.
So I think, Christine, if I'm not seeing everybody here. I need some help with my technology. I just lost everybody. I can't see anybody. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, well, we'll proceed. Thank you for letting me know. What I'd like to do is just hear from you, any comments that you would like to make to Christine. The objective here, I believe, Christine, is for Christine to have motions developed, I think, for next meeting. And anybody who would like to work with her on developing those motions would be most welcome. But today, we can just give any comments or feedback that you would like to share with Christine at this point. How about Haneen, anything you'd like to add or comment?
I do have some comments. Some people are raising their hands though.
I have no visual screen here. I can't see anybody.
Okay.
So everybody's going to have to speak to me. Thanks.
Jane, I believe that Tracy's hand is up.
Okay. Tracy.
Hi, just for a point of clarification, as the group is developing the recommendations, Christine, HRM does not do data collection. So making a recommendation that HRM collect data, it's not something that we do or we could do. What you might want to think about is identifying who does collect data. So for example, Caroline and I have been working with a group called, help me out, Caroline.
Engage Nova Scotia.
Thank you, Engage Nova Scotia. So, maybe the recommendation could be HRM work with Engage Nova Scotia or something like that, because I don't want you to put forward a recommendation that's going to be immediately thrown out. And that is one that it's not something that the municipality does, but we do work with partners. So, that's one way to kind of look at that, so that it's not lost, but recognizing that we don't collect that kind of data. The data that we do collect in the municipality is very, very basic. So upon application, when somebody applies for a job, we collect employment equity data. But once somebody is employed in the organization, that data is lost. So if council ever asks us for employment equity data, we give them data on the number of employment equity candidates that have applied for a position. We most recently did an employment equity survey. We're still trying to find our way through those results. So we may be able to have something from employment equity survey that we did, but that's still rolling its way through the system. So we just don't collect that data as on the operations side of HRM. So I just wanted to throw that out there so that you, in looking at developing your motion, recognize that we don't do data collection. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. So we'll just, fortunately, I can see you again. Something happened here. So Haneen, is there anything that you would like to comment on?
I would just like to say, Christine, that was a wonderful presentation, and the recommendations all seem very plausible. Thank you, Tracy, for identifying the scope that HRM does work within. And I'd be more than happy to help with any of the recommendations. So please, they all seem wonderful. And if you wanted to take up Tracy's suggestion of advising to work with Engage Nova Scotia, I guess is the name, I'd be more than happy to help with that.
Thank you very much, Henny and Tracy, for the clarification. We definitely will work with the diversity and inclusion team. Just make like as mentioned, the motion that I list is not a final language; it's an idea, and then I want to like at the end just make the idea work. So we will find a way to make the language like kind of correct.
How about Lily? Is anything you'd like to comment on or ask questions about?
I don't have any questions, but thank you so much for the presentation, Christine, and for following up on your presentation last time. And it's great to see, multiple really actionable and wonderful ideas for moving forward to make recommendations. So I look forward to seeing those come into play. And it's too bad we can't make a statement, because I think that would have definitely been my first thought as well. But I'm glad that there are a few ways that we can think about moving this forward.
Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And actually, just looking at the list of the action items, I think a lot of this can actually be captured at the staff level and wouldn't require a full motion to go, through council and the council process, because that, frankly, that slows things down. So I think, I think number one, if you're gonna, we can accomplish that by working with Engage Nova Scotia. The third one, when it comes to the anti-Asian racism data, and Tracy's absolutely correct. We don't really collect data, but the police do. And I wonder if we could get perhaps some information from them to see what information, what data they have on reported anti-Asian racism events, incidents that have been reported to them. And I'm just wondering if that is something that perhaps I could take that away. I'm also a member of the Board of Police Commission, and I could certainly approach police with that request to get some data for us on that. So that's one. And then the final recommendation, information resources, information graphic on reporting incidents in different languages. I'm just wondering if that is something that perhaps Tracy's team at a diversity and inclusion can work with our comm staff, because I know that we have expanded the number of languages that we send out our PSAs and have made available. Perhaps that is something that we could look at doing through Tracy and team and comm staff to have some sort of release sent out or infographic sent out via PSA in different languages. So I just throw that out there for consideration, but I think all of this can be accomplished at the staff level and really doesn't require a motion of council to gum things up.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Tanya, do you have?
So thank you, Christine, for also allowing us to continue this conversation. Councillor Blackburn, thank you for the ideas around the reaching out to the Halifax Regional Police. My first question was, is the information missing or is it just not publicized? So hopefully we are able to get access to that through the Halifax Regional Police so that we can have a better understanding. I definitely support the idea of multilingual posters or communications. And I guess my question is, because I don't want to take away the focus from the anti-Asian racism, are we able to encompass that kind of communication in multiple languages, or should the focus stay on anti-Asian racism right now? What do you think about that, Christine?
I think because Asian country include a different language. For example, East Asia of China, Japan, Korea, but actually Iran is actually an Asia country, so it's actually many different kind of language, and I think it's when I know it's about anti-Asian racism, but at the same time, if we can kind of say English like two birds one stone, like if we can help more people by this initiative, I think that would be great.
Awesome, thank you. I often do forget how broad that spectrum of the world is. So thank you for clarifying that. And I will totally help with that in any way that I can. So thank you.
Thank you.
Christine, are you wanting to speak more?
Yes, actually, I have a comment about, thank you very much, Councillor Blackburn, for your different idea. I think that would be great if from a staff level, we can move things faster. And about the police data, actually, in my presentation, I did reach out to the Halifax Regional Police. Unfortunately, there's no many hate crime in total reported to the police, like a total hate crime in the past 3 years, police about like each year about 6 to 13. So it definitely didn't capture enough about anti-Asian racism, and also many incidents they are not reported. So that's kind of issue. So I feel like by having that kind of poster in the going forward, it really gives a platform for people to report. And also like you and Tracy mentioned, working with partners like Engage Nova Scotia or other partners, it will help. But I do have a question. The reason why I really want to make a motion is it's great if our staff level can make the movement. At the same time, I think anti-Asian racism is an important issue. I personally want this issue kind of be raised to a council level so they are aware of this, and also through a gender lens, like is an important issue toward to women as well.
Okay.
Mm.
Thanks, Christine. We'll move over to Mallory. I think you have your hand and it's your turn to make comments.
Yeah, I was wondering if someone could explain to me the process of how reporting is done right now. Is it, and I know we've already talked about data not being collected, but I'm just wondering how one would currently go about reporting an incident. And I think the posters are a great idea. And maybe then have a dedicated direction of if you do see something, and then this is where you go next, or just because I don't know how things are currently reported now. If anyone could tell me, that'd be great.
I have happy to talk more. So when I do a little bit of research, I know there's normally two ways. One way is like people reporting to police, but to give consider many Asian, they are immigrants, and or they are international students, so they don't have a permanent residency or something. Sometimes they concerned, so they do not report this kind of issue to police. And there are lots of reporting websites through Asian organization across national organization in Canada. But when I research that kind of data, there's not much from Halifax or Nova Scotia. So this is kind of question for me as well. So I think if we have a poster, we really give a source or place people know where to go to.
Thanks, Christine. Caroline, I think you want to weigh in here on that.
Yeah, it's not really a question, more of a comment. I'm wondering about, since there is a link here to sort of reporting, we're talking about data that is collected or sort of falls within the realm of Halifax Regional Police, and we know that experiences of racism and discrimination probably intersect with perceptions of safety and gender-based violence. I'm wondering if it would be valuable to reach out to Amy Siciliano, the public safety officer. There may be some data that she's already had analyzed through Engage Nova Scotia, because they actually did that as part of the UN Women Safe Cities program. So just making sure that we, I guess, have done all the research and aren't duplicating efforts. And maybe it's the case that there is no information and we need to kind of gather more and further explore. Or maybe we will find that there's something there that's helpful to support your motions, Christine.
Thanks, Caroline. Councillor Stoddart, do you want to comment or question, weigh in here?
My question is for Councillor Blackburn, because he's more experienced than I am as a newbie. Just wondering, in connection with the Asian History Month, is it possible that Christine could give a presentation to council? Just, I don't know how that works.
Most definitely. If that is something, I mean, it's up to the Agenda Review Committee to agree, but I mean, it all starts with just an email to clerks@halifax.ca. Introduce yourself, let them know that you serve on this committee. Let them know that May is Asian Heritage Month, and you'd like to make a presentation on anti-Asian racism. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would do it. I would do it sooner rather than later, because I think when's the next meeting? On the 18th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. I would send that email off to the just clerks@halifax.ca.
Would it help for Haruka, maybe you can answer this too. Would it help for Christine when she makes that request for her to be able to say that the Watch Committee supports her request and encourages the council to accept it?
Couldn't hurt. Just say that it was, it was discussed at the most recent Watch Committee meeting, and Christine was encouraged to ask to make a presentation. Yeah.
Okay. Haruka, do we need a motion on that, or can we just say it was kind of a consensus?
Motion is not needed. That's just a personal request that will be coming from Christine, and I just sent the email address in the chat, so she can send the email there.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the support, and I will reach out to the Kurt's office.
Yeah, that's great. Fantastic idea. Iona, thank you.
Yeah, that's so. And certainly communicate, I think, on behalf that you are being supported on this by the Watch Committee, that we are encouraging the council to invite you to that presentation. And I heard that Haneen is willing to work with you as you would develop, if any motions need to be developed. Was there anybody else that volunteered?
Jane, I haven't had a chance to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, Holly.
Over.
I'm missing my alphabetical thing here. Sorry, Holly. Go for it.
It's okay. But Christine, I would be happy to help you with any. I'm also of Asian descent as well, and I just wanted to acknowledge that it takes a lot of emotional labor, I know, to share about racism, especially when it's something that's close to you. So I just want to acknowledge that I'm really grateful for your presentation last month, and thank you again for bringing this conversation back to the table. One other idea that I had, just thinking about our presentation today from LIP, I'm wondering if maybe when those stories or that platform comes to life, if maybe there is an opportunity for stories from people from Asian descent, of Asian descent, to talk about perhaps experiences of racism or ways that allies have stood by them. I'm just thinking, I know they mentioned capturing kind of the good and the challenges. And I think it's so powerful, although it's a sensitive topic, if there's people who are open to sharing that, I think it's a very powerful learning opportunity, and we might be able to progress, I guess, some more dialogue on that. And the platform itself might also serve as a way of, I guess, connecting people to more information about how to report incidents or resources that I guess people can use if they're experiencing any sort of anti-Asian racism, or they know someone who is.
Thank you, Holly. Those are great ideas. Christine, are you all set? Does anybody else have anything else they need to or would like to contribute at this point? Christine, I hope you're feeling, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Stoddard.
I just had one comment on Tanya's point about language and Christine's point about, you know, the more languages you can bring forward, the better. I had some data. This is 2 years old, so I'm hoping it's still the same, but here in Halifax, Arabic was the second most used language. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, you know, like I didn't expect that. I mean, yeah, that would be something as well to acknowledge because, you know, we have so many different dialects of different languages and then we have Arabic. So it just really, really surprised me and impressed me at the same time. But that's it.
Thanks. So, Christine, I hope you feel supported. Thank you again for your presentation and your efforts. And looks like there's lots of ways we can progress. Haneen, I think you wanted to get one more thing in here.
One last thing. Yes, Council Stoddard, actually we have quite a few issues with translation for Arabic because there are so many different dialects. So that's been a big issue, and the amount of people who speak both languages fluently is minimal. Christine, I don't remember in your presentation last month, did you define what it is to be Asian? Like, who do we consider?
I didn't do that, but actually, lately I sense the social media post. It has a nice like a infographic to describe what are the Asian country and information like that.
I just wanted to, I think that would be something maybe valuable, especially if you are to move on to present to council.
Yeah, my idea is probably when I do the presentation, I will do a little bit change of the presentation and to present to the committee. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate like many new ideas and also I appreciate everyone who support me on this important topic.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. Now back to you, Holly. Holly and I and Councillor Stoddard had an opportunity to attend a workshop, and Holly's going to just give us a little update on that.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to give just a short little update on the Women Transforming Cities workshop that was held at the end of April. We had a handful of people from the committee attend the workshop, and I think we all agreed it was a really good chance to kind of just meet informally and learn about the different work that's going on across Canada in terms of, I guess, feminist movements or women's action in different cities across Canada. And so today what I thought I would do is just briefly give an overview of kind of the key things that we chatted about during this workshop, as well as a couple of key takeaways that we discussed at the end that we thought might be of interest to people on the committee. I also believe Caroline said that there's going to be a recording of the workshop available. So I'm just going to give kind of the Spark Notes version of it. And I would really encourage people to, if you have the opportunity, to go back and watch some parts of the workshop so that you get an understanding of what was discussed, and maybe you will be inspired with some different ideas as well. So just very quickly, what we chatted about, we learned and we chatted a lot about intersectionality, what intersectionality means, how it influences privilege and oppression, and where we ourselves as individuals sit when it comes to intersectionality. So we chatted about not just gender, but things like income, religion, education, abilities, disabilities, sexual orientation. There were, I guess, a lot of different, just like, not categories, but just different layers of identity. And I think it was a very helpful tool to start off the workshop to think about where we are situated. And I think having that level of reflection when we come to these meetings and we think about what we want to move forward as a committee is really important. We also had an overview of the different women's groups that are working in Canada. So we chatted about WAVE, Cowie in Ottawa, as well as some groups in Vancouver. And I think as most of us agreed at the workshop, that was one of the actually most interesting or informative parts because we actually got to hear a lot about what other groups are doing across Canada. And we also learned a bit about how Watch is a little bit different from those other groups. So something that I was really surprised about is that many groups are actually not necessarily recognized by their municipal government. So they might have been formed kind of apart by just women who are very interested in making change in their own community. But as Watch, we actually have a lot of power in a sense because we are already recognized by City Council. They formed us, they wanted us. And so from this workshop, one of the big takeaways was that we do have a considerable amount of, maybe not power, but our foot's already in the door. And so we should really leverage that. And so we talked a little bit about some of the things that are going on across Canada and some other initiatives that these women's groups have worked on. And I wanted to share 3 initiatives in particular that we talked about that seemed to have some interest with the people who were at the workshop. The first was, I think these actually might have all been based from the WAVE group in Edmonton, but the first was council report cards, which were interesting. So essentially what that is that committee members on WAVE were following how their council members were voting at council meetings for different ideas. And annually, what they would do is they would check in with the council members and say, I noticed that you seem to be really supporting women in your city because you voted X, Y, and Z, but I noticed that you were supporting maybe this initiative. And I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit why, or perhaps they explained maybe from a gendered lens why that voting decision may have affected women. But it was an interesting way of communicating with council members and also holding people accountable as well. And from the conversations that we had at the workshop, it helped to build a lot of relationships, as well as, I guess, really just accountability. The second initiative was around a report card on women's quality of life. So they took data from a citywide survey and they were able to analyze it to see how women were experiencing life in Edmonton. And I think from that workshop, Caroline said that they were working on similar data from Engage Nova Scotia around quality of life. So we may have something similar coming from HRM. And the third initiative that people took interest in was a zero tolerance sexual harassment and sexual assault policy for Edmonton Transit. And so that was something that some members of the committee in the workshop found interesting, that this committee was able to leverage for their city. In terms of kind of the what next or what we can do as committee members moving forward, there were 4 key suggestions for us. The first was to continue building relationships with council members. In particular, some of the ideas that were suggested were perhaps inviting different council members to come to our watch meetings so that they can learn more about what interests us and what our views are on key issues in the city. Another suggestion was for us to be following council meetings as well as looking at their minutes to see what are key issues being presented to City Council, and that we could actually be proactive in some ways and perhaps discuss some of these issues instead of being reactive and just reacting to decisions that have been made. The third kind of idea that came out of our workshop was the importance of breaking down municipal jargon, for lack of a better word, especially when it comes to recruiting new members for Watch. So perhaps by using more lay language, we may be able to recruit women from different backgrounds, particularly those who might not be as well educated as many members of our committee is currently. And that would help kind of open up the different perspectives that we might have as a committee. And the fourth kind of takeaway was that it would be important, and if we could, connect with other women's groups from across Canada. So perhaps having either a group come and give a presentation to our group about things that they're doing and how they do it in particular could be something that's helpful for us. That's it.
Oh, thank you, Holly. That captures really well the so much of what we accomplished. And out of that meeting came the idea that it would be a really good thing for us to hear on a regular basis what the City Council is working on. And so that leads right into our next agenda item. And Councillor Blackburn is going to give us an update on council activity. So over to you.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And yes, from those suggestions, so it's my understanding from this meeting forward, this will be a standing item on the agenda, an update from Regional Council. And Councillor Stoddard and I will take turns going back and forth. So Iona will take care of it for the month of June. And the most recent Regional Council meeting minutes will also be part of the Watch Committee, their agenda package as well. So if you want a bit more information on specific items, the meeting minutes will be in there. So so just to give you a quick overview, the first thing that I wanted to report was the GBA Plus training request. That has passed executive committee, and a staff report on that is due back the end of July. So that was the request for GBA Plus training for all councillors, and then there was a separate motion for GBA Plus training for all HRM staff as part of their onboarding when they're first hired. So again, that report is coming back the end of July. The committee's request to add racialized women to our committee complement, that also has been accepted. And we're going to see that on the agenda at Regional Council next council meeting. So that will be coming up fairly soon. Council updates. So we've had 3 council meetings since we met last. So this is for the April 6th, April 20th, and May 4th council meetings. Among the things that we did, we've passed a motion to waive the fees for sidewalk patios for this summer in recognition of the issues that many of our restaurants and bars are having because of COVID. We have asked for an independent review of the policing model in HRM to see what we could be doing better, if we can be doing anything better. The policing model that we have right now, for those not familiar, Halifax Regional Police covers the Peninsula, Bedford areas, City of Dartmouth, and then RCMP looks after the outskirts, the suburbs. Seamus, I'm not done. The suburbs, and so that's been an interesting conversation, and we've asked for an independent report on that. We have moved to start the process to establish an Africville visioning study. So that's going to set the framework for what the visioning study for the community looks like. We've asked for a staff report on expanding the Rainbow Crosswalk program to include Pan-African colors. And again, that staff report is expected back sometime this summer. We've approved the contract that will improve the technology on our transit buses. So this will lead to the new technology of being able to pay with a phone app. But that contract has been approved, and now that project is moving forward. We solidified some long-term funding for the mobile food market, so that is funded by HRM straight through now till 2025. We have started the process to expand the Student Transit Pass program to incorporate as many kids as possible to make the student transit passes as affordable as possible. We've approved the study that will start the work on establishing a new heritage conservation district, and this one will be in downtown Halifax. We already have a few of them, including the Schmidtville Heritage District, for example, which is an area that's sort of in behind Central Library. The other big thing we accomplished in the last couple of weeks, the 2021-22 budget has been approved. First time ever that Halifax has a budget of $1 billion. And we've put the budget to bed, and we managed to hold taxes at a 1% increase, both residential and commercial, which is far below the CPI for the last year. Approved amendments to the land use bylaw finally to allow development of the former site of the Nova Scotia Home for Colored Children. So this just changes the land use bylaws, so the group behind the development can start its work now to go to the community and see what it is exactly they want to see on that property. And that is pretty much it for council for the last 3 meetings. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. That was a mammoth report. That's the last item on the agenda, and we have a few more minutes. So I'll just open it to any questions for Councillor Blackburn. Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, Haneen, and then Tanya.
It sort of relates to Holly's comments, and then as well as what Councillor Blackburn just said. So I was just wondering, in terms of the report card, the council report card, does that look like an Excel sheet? That's how I'm imagining it, but I'm not sure if that's how it is, like how everybody sort of voted. Is that what it is?
We weren't given too much information on what it looked like. So I'm not sure. I think perhaps if we reached out to WAVE, we could ask, or I see Caroline also said that Women Transforming Cities also uses a scorecard. I don't know if it necessarily was like a ranking or if it was more of a conversation, like we've noticed that you're voting this way or things like that. I'm not sure, but that would be something that we could reach out about if we wanted more information.
I think Caroline might be able to help us out here.
Yeah, I could provide some clarification. I believe that Andrea from Women Transforming Cities talked about 2 types. So the first type is essentially a report card on what councillors are doing. So they say they campaign and they say, I will do X, Y, Z thing. And Women Transforming Cities, which is not a council committee, it's a nonprofit group that's, doing advocacy. They essentially, they look at the record of these councillors and say, you said you wanted to do X, Y, Z. You have, accomplished X, but you haven't done Z, and obviously with a gendered lens, right? So that's where the accountability comes in. And then the other type is essentially, a quantitative and qualitative research report card on what are the variables and indicators that are telling us the story of what it's like to be a woman in a municipality. So WAVE has a scorecard that's an analysis of stats can and different quality of life indicators. And that's the type of work that our office, Diversity, Inclusion, and ANSIO is working on. So not the one that is looking at councillors' voting records or the decisions they're making, but rather what are the markers of how it is to be, a woman in a city, and using that information to inform and design policies, programs, and services that are, barrier-free and inclusive. I hope that provided some clarification, Haneen.
That really clarified it. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, Councillor Blackburn. That was really, it provides some context of what we're doing and what we're working toward. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Tanya, did you want to ask a question?
More just a quick comment, yeah. Holly, thank you for sharing your findings from the presentation and workshop the other day. I really like the idea of a report card for councillors as well as the city. I think that's a neat idea. So I'm going to go see what WAVE's up to and get some more information on that. And Councillor Blackburn, thank you very much for sharing the update. I just wanted to echo what Haneen said, is just to really give some good context to the city. And I like the summary opposed to actually reading the minutes themselves, because I can find the minutes a little bit overwhelming. So I appreciate your summary.
Perfect. No, if you like this this format of presentation, we'll stick with this. I just go through the minutes and just sort of pick out some of the more newsworthy items. I mean, you guys don't need to know that we've approved the sale of a plot of land that's 2 feet by 4 feet in Lawrencetown. I mean, that's, yeah. I just pick out the sexy stuff.
I think Lily would like to weigh in here.
Yes, I would. I also agree that having the report from Councillor Blackburn and in a future Councillor Starr is really helpful. In terms of the Women Transforming Cities workshop, I'm sorry that I missed it, but it's great to have had a summary. I really like the idea of working on building relationships with more of the counselors. I think, while it's wonderful that we have 2 counselors on our committee, women counselors, I think it's really important that all the counselors are aware of what our committee is discussing and thinking about. And so maybe looking into inviting other counselors to the meetings would be a great idea. And also because I know that they're welcome to attend, as some others have, but an invitation from the committee would probably be encouragement for counselors to attend. And I mean, probably not all at once, but I think that would be really great because we need all of the counselors to be thinking about women's issues and gender issues in the municipality.
Yeah, thanks, Lily, for that comment. And I think we've thought that too, and I think we're counting on Councillor Blackburn and Stoddard to help us with that a little bit, because I agree with you, Holly, that or Lily, I'm sorry, that a personal invitation goes a long way, and hopefully we can, over time, have each of the councillors come in and sit in and listen to a meeting. So help develop that relationship a bit. Any other comments before we call for adjournment? I think we're done. So thank you to all of you. Another great meeting. Thank you for all your preparation, for your thoughtful comments and questions. I feel like we're moving forward, and we are really dealing with very important and substantive issues. So thanks very much. And as Caroline mentioned at the very beginning, I hope all of you and your families will stay safe and hunker down and do what we need to do so that we get rid of this darn virus. It's a very scary thing. So best wishes to all of you. And for those of you who are mothers, happy Mother's Day. And for those of you who are thinking about your mothers, think about them as champions and warriors. So could I have a motion for adjournment?